go. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share the Homegrown Habitat. You'll see it hopefully. Ashley, let me know if you can see it okay. I'm sure you can.
It's coming. It's not loaded. There we go.
We good? All right, it says participants can
Okay.
see your screen, so that's usually a good sign. As always, if you have any questions or if you need any clarifications, you can put it in the chat. That'd be the easiest. Hold off till the end, and we can discuss anything that you need. So on the last one, we really talked about the importance of native plants and why we love growing them so much. And some of this is going to be similar because they all kind of correlate. As always, we demonstrate our injustice for all posters because we're federally funded. University programs are available to everyone. Um, so if you have any issues, just let us know. And this today's all about preparing the land. And I'm really excited about the next one, not because I'm not teaching it, but because I really love learning about insects. And Miss Maddie Potter is going to be joining us and be talking about some of those interesting interactions that are happening between our native plants and the insect population. Because, like I've always said, if you plant certain plants, you're going to see really cool things, things that you have never seen before. And that's happening all the time in my yard. I just planted dogbane last year, and I'm hoping to see the dogbane beetle. If you've never seen that, it is like the most shiny green iridescent beetle, and that is excitement in my world. We talked about this a little bit last time, but I just really wanted to reiterate. You want to be planting your plants where they love to be. So if you're not sure about your sun, there is the sun shade map, or it's called the Shade Map app. And you can see the little URL right over here, shademap.app. This is the extension office. And the cool thing is it can tell you how much sunlight that you're going to be getting in the different places. So this is our demo garden over here, right by the extension building. So if I were to walk out there, I would have no idea that this top part of the demo garden receives such little light. Because you know there's a tree there, but you don't really notice how much it's shading everything. So just be mindful of the trees in your yard can provide a lot of shade for everything that's underneath of it, more than you might think. I know Ashley talked about this a little bit last year about this or about this last 2 months ago, sleep, creep, and leap rule. So this planting down here at the bottom, it's from American Meadows, and I thought that that was a beautiful demonstration from year one to year three. You can see it went from being like, oh, I see some empty pots, it looks like, to like, oh my goodness, that's a lush, beautiful habitat. But you have to remember, it took 3 years. And I also want you to notice like how nicely cleared that land is, that they're not trying to plant it into grass. They didn't really till the soil much. They didn't do anything. They just made sure that there was nothing there that that poor plant was going to have to attempt to compete with. So year one, which is where your plants are going to be when you receive them, they're not going to look at all like let me see, someone's trying to come in. They're not going to look at anything at all like the adult plants. I mean, if it's a mint, it's going to smell minty. The leaf structure is going to look the same, but a lot of times plants do not get the flowers on the first year. And if they do get their flowers, it's a much smaller flower than the one that you're going to see on year three. And then yesterday, I just posted on the Allegheny Facebook page the difference between a plant like butterfly weed planted in the right space and the not so right space. And that's in my own house. Like, I'm not even gonna tell you I'm perfect. I'm not a perfect gardener. But I had a lot of seedlings, so I was like, I'll put that over there. And very quickly, over the last couple years, it's been easy to tell which plants are in the right place that grew to be the size the container said it was going to be. And they're, nice and 3 feet wide and 3 feet tall. And the other one's like a little stick of a plant because it has too much shade. So keep that in mind too. So year one, they're really focusing on their root system. So the top's going to look small. Year two, it's going to look a little bit larger. You might get a little bit more foliage and you're going to get maybe some blooming. But by year three is really when you're going to notice that the plant is going to look like what it's supposed to look like, which is what you maybe were lured in by the beautiful packaging, like the seed pack. So you can see the difference here. So why is competition their biggest enemy? So I met with one school and they were doing what is called a no-mow zone. I'm sure some of you have heard of that before. It's just where they don't mow a zone and they let it go wild. And so it's beautiful in theory, because if you had all of these wonderful native plants that are, their seeds are in the seed bank in that soil and they can come up, it sounds great. But we're going to be honest, most of the seeds in seed banks along a road are going to be weed seeds. They're going to be all of these exotic, competitive plants. And if you were to just take a seed bomb or take some native seeds and sprinkle them along that, there's a really good chance that none of them are going to grow. They might grow a little bit, but they're going to be outcompeted. And the reason why is these invasive plants, the exotic plants, if you were to look on a map of like where they're from, they're going to grow faster, they're going to leaf out earlier, and they're going to produce more seeds. Native plants can't compete with that. They're very competitive, but they can't compete with an invasive plant. The second one is our high deer population. If you live in a place in Allegheny or Garrett County that you're like, oh my gosh, we have no deer, I would love to know about that, because I have not found, I mean, we can go to downtown in the city of Cumberland and you can see deer. I actually had a deer run into the side of my car a couple years ago when I was in downtown Cumberland. A stoplight it just slammed into my vehicle. So there are high deer populations everywhere. And because of that, they're going to browse your native plants instead of the invasive plants, because sometimes they prefer what they know is food versus what is there. I've seen this before. You can grow honeysuckle wherever you want because the deer are not going to touch it. And if you were to plant a native honeysuckle, they'll probably browse it a little bit. And then I just had one of my Master Gardener interns. They bought some of the plants from our plant sale, and they were varieties that I told her, I was like, look, in my yard, the deer don't eat these, but it's kind of like us. We all have our own taste. We all have our own flavors. So like, if you were to give me something with cheese on it, I don't eat cheese. I'm not going to touch it. But if you were to put that in front of my brother, he's probably going to wolf it down. So deer are kind of the same. They all have their own taste. And then also their population is going to allow them to decide what they really want to eat. So if you're in a very dense city place and it's a high deer population, they'll probably chew on your milkweed. They'll probably put some of your butterfly weed, like or milkweed, in their mouth. And they'll try some things that are supposed to be poisonous. So just keep that in mind. If you have a high deer population, I've even seen where people have used upside down trash cans, like from the Dollar Tree, the mesh ones, for the first couple years, just to allow those plants to grow with like landscape pins on it. So if you know you have a high deer population, think ahead how you're going to keep them away from it. And I know fencing's the best way, but that doesn't work for everybody. Our soil's been altered. We've moved things. We've built houses. We've brought in soil. We've taken away soil. So a lot of our native plants have adapted to our local soil, the soil that they were supposed to grow in, but we've changed that. That doesn't mean the plant's not going to grow there, but it might take it a little bit longer to get acclimated to it because it's not the soil that it thought it was going to grow up in. Fragmented edge habitats. Ashley talked about that a little bit last month. And it's just showing you how forests or meadows are broken up by development. So we kind of have habitats where there's a road running through the middle, or there's some sort of way that things can't pass from one side to the other. So that's a competitive thing for plants because, they can exist on one side of the road, but they can't exist on the other. And then the disturbance is just talking about the soil structure. But then also, when we disturb the soil, when we till the soil, when we take what's on the top and put it on the bottom, we're basically burying usually weed and invasive seeds. I just got a picture from one of our previous master gardeners wondering what all of this plant was that was coming up in their garden because they had never had that. And it was like this dense carpet of an invasive plant. And the question was like, well, how did it get there? Well, it was fine on top of the soil, but when we tilled the soil, we put it back underneath and we gave it a place to grow. So be thinking about that with how you want to prepare your land, because when you till, it's going to look really good at first, but then you planted a bunch of weed seeds. So you're going to have to think about, okay, I tilled it. I don't want to keep tilling because that's disturbing the land. So I'll be showing you some other ways on how you can kind of clear the land without always using a tiller. So when we talk about invasive plants, the first thing is you need to know what the plant is. A lot of times people will be like, how do I get rid of a plant I don't want? And my answer is, well, what is the plant? because we're never going to just give you the name of a chemical and be like, ah, spray this, it'll kill everything. That's the last case. Like you can see, we don't want to just go around spraying things because our native plants are also plants and we don't want to eliminate them. So first things first is to identify the problem. There's all different places that you can check. Ask Extension is our website. If you type in Ask Extension UMD, you're going to need to upload a picture with your question, and we're going to get back to you. You could call me or Ashley if you're local. If you're not local, that's fine. You have every county has a master gardener coordinator within their county, so they will be able to get back to you. So make sure that you know what the plant is, and it's okay if you don't know, because sometimes I get pictures I don't know, and I have to go to people that are higher up than me, and sometimes I'm sending Ashley lots of pictures asking her questions. I did put this resource in here. It's through the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, and it's Common Invasive Plants Easy ID cards. It's really nice because it's going to show you what the plant looks like, as well as the fact that it's going to help you identify some invasive plants that maybe you haven't come into contact with. I remember one time someone was talking about Japanese stilt grass, and I said, I'm so glad I don't have that. That sounds super invasive. I did have it. I just didn't recognize it. So being able to identify them before they're going to seed and making more is really important. So then you're going to have a toolbox on, and like we're talking a mental toolbox on how you're going to approach these plants that you don't want. The first thing that we always say is the best way is to physically or mechanically remove them. So that's digging and pulling. So with stilt grass, great news is it is easy to pull. Bad news is it makes a million seeds. So a lot of invasives, some invasives, are pretty easy to just mechanically pull. That's going to be our first. But let's say you have a whole area filled with it. That might not be what's going to work for you. So then if that doesn't work, we can do some biological recruiting of an organism. That's rare. Sometimes we can have things that'll come up and show up and we'll eat it. Um, my favorite way that some people deal with, like we're talking large groves of invasive plants. I don't know if you've ever seen where they bring in the goats and the goats eat it. That would be for a very large management area. I can't see a person bringing in a goat for a smaller area, but I'm to the point with poison ivy in my yard. I might need to go find a goat because I've heard they do a great job of eliminating that plant. Ashley, I need your goat. I didn't even think of asking her.
I've got 8
And then
babies ready to go.
I was going to say, I got some because I'm covered in it right now. And then the last ditch effort would be a chemical using like an herbicide and following the directions on there. And when we talk about using an herbicide, that would be like we could work together to decide what that least affecting plant would be. We don't want it to be something that's going to kill like all broadleafs. We're going to pick something that is only going to pick on that one plant. And it might take multiple applications. That's the tricky part about invasive plants. If it was super easy to eliminate them, then they wouldn't be invasive. Understanding the plant's life cycle, just understanding how it grows is going to help you deal with the control of it. Because if you can get any plant before it makes seeds, then you have just saved yourself a ton of work. But if you didn't realize, like it was later in the season, you're like, I'm busy, I don't have time for that. And then those seeds are spread all throughout your area, it's going to be harder to control because that one plant just became 10,000 plants possibly. So understand the life cycle because some are biennial, which means you have 2 years to eliminate it. And then some can have multiple cycles throughout the year. And then the last one, this is something I struggle with in life. It's having patience. I want things to be dealt with when I do it, and I want it to be over. And that is not how this is going to work. I've been trying to eliminate that stilt grass that's in my yard for years. We have less of it, which is great, but it's not something that is going to be eliminated in year one. It's not something that's going to be eliminated in 3 or 4 years. But the goal is that every year we have less, that we're reducing that seed bank, and over time, that place is going to be filled in with more plants that can compete with it. And there are different plants that have different competitive values. One of the more aggressive or native plants that I've had that I think can pretty much compete with a Japanese stilt grass is common evening primrose. It's a tall plant, it's a tough plant, it seeds heavily. So if you don't mind having it everywhere, it is a native plant. But sometimes you have to fight fire with fire, and you have to figure out which native plants are aggressive and which ones are least aggressive. And sometimes I put aggressive plants versus aggressive non-natives. Our state flower, the black-eyed Susan, is an aggressive plant, and it will compete with some other pretty aggressive non-natives too. So learning things like that can help you with what you're trying to get rid of. Soil. Oh my goodness. People were always worried about their soil. So clay is totally normal in Maryland, and it's not always bad. So if we think about the three ingredients in soil, we have sand, which is the largest particle size, silt, which is the middle size, which is like if you've ever been in a creek or a river and like you can touch that really soft feeling soil in there, that's the silt. And then clay, if you haven't dug a hole in your yard and ran across some different clay that you could almost make a pot out of, go you. I know if I dig in my yard, I could basically make a pot out of certain areas in my soil. So it's not the clay, it's how well your soil is going to be able to drain. Because I have certain parts of my yard that are very, very heavy clay, which means when it rains, it's not really permeable and the water is going to lay on top. So be thinking about in your yard or in where you want to plant things, if you are having that same issue where the clay is very compacted, and if I were to dig it up, it almost might be yellow. It might not have a great smell. It's gone from aerobic and having air to being anaerobic. That's probably not going to be the best place to be planting most of your native plants. We're going to have to work on that soil, aerate it, give it a little bit of time, and see if we can make it more habitable for anything that wants to try to live and put its roots down in there. So I just added this into here. This is called like a hole test or a clay test. It's just showing you how quickly the water is going to drain through that area. Um, so what you basically do is you dig a hole about 12 inches by 12 inches. That's back-breaking work here in Allegheny and Garrett County because you are going to run into, at least in my yard, you're probably going to run into like 74 boulders. But once you get that 12 by 12 area dug out, and you might want to do more than one area so you can kind of test them against each other. You're going to fill the area with water. You're just really letting it sit, let it sit overnight, let it get saturated. That's going to give you better results than right now. Our soil's pretty dry and it might not give you the same results. So let it kind of, seep in there a little bit. Refill it the next day. And then down at the bottom, step 4, measure the water level by laying a stick or a pipe in there. I'd probably just use a ruler because that's how my brain works. And then tape a measuring stick to it. I would just use the measuring stick across there. Continue to measure the water every hour until the hole is empty and notice the number of inches that the water drops per hour. So then you want to go back in and see what is the amount. So I can put the results for the clay test in there to say what's the difference between normal and what's not normal. Basically, if it's really high still, that's showing that that water is not working its way into the system, back into the watering system, and that's not good because that means the soil is not draining properly. So clay is good, clay is normal, but when it's not allowing the soil to drain properly, we do need to address that. So typically right now we're having more dry soil, but I want you to remember all weather is a trend. So if we were to just plant, because we're like everywhere's dry right now, so it doesn't matter where I put it. That's true. But we have to remember that with all things, weather is also a trend. And if you know that certain parts in your landscape where you've lived for multiple years is typically wet, but right now it's dry because we're in a drought, I want you to remember that's probably going to continue being a dry spot. So you need to know where the dry spots are in your landscape, where the average spots are. That means it just gets normally wet, and where the wet areas are. Because if you were to plant the wrong plant in the wrong place, or whatever way you want to say that, it's not going to thrive. I'm not saying it's going to die. It's just not going to thrive. And it's going to be frustrating because you think you're doing something wrong and you're not. The plant's just not, it's just surviving. The best thing you can do is after it rains is really watch the areas in your landscape where things are puddling, where things are laying. I think it's supposed to rain coming up here soon, so that might be a good opportunity for you to go out and really start looking around where puddles lay or maybe even where things kind of run off of the yard. Because our goal is the right plant at the right place. If you really want to dive deep a little bit, I added this guide from, this is from Prairie Moon. They are trying to sell you things. They are a nursery, but they are also a resource because they do a great job of making sure to try to help you, just like we are, to be successful with your plants. So in the listing of the plant, it's going to tell you all of the things about it. It's going to tell you if it's a perennial. It's going to tell you the sun exposure. But right down here, this is important, your soil moisture. If you were to plant a plant that would survive best in a rain garden in your regular dry yard, I'm going to say it might make it a year, maybe two, and then it's not going to do so well. So make sure that you really, and you can even click on this part right here where it says soil moisture. And when it comes up, it'll tell you what each one of those means. So like wet means soggy, marshy. It's just wet most of the year. Medium wet, wet part of the year. Medium, average garden soil, that's our normal soil. Medium dry means water is just gone from it pretty quickly. And then dry is just excessively drained. You can work with some of your soil, but just know where your soil is at for now. So all of this can be easily found right here on the Prairie Moon Nursery site. And any plant that you type in will give you all of this information. And I wish I would have followed it. It's not like recommended, it's a necessity. Because sometimes we're like, that's what they think it needs. Nope, that's what it needs. It needs to have the right living conditions. All right, so now we know that they need the right soil or the best soil we can give them. We know that they're going to need light, so we can make sure that they're not going to be planted where it's not enough light or too much light. But now, unless you just magically have this perfectly cleared spot, which if you do, fantastic. But in the normal world, we have a spot that has grass or invasives or kind of grass with some other things growing in there. And we need to know what is the best way of getting rid of it and how can we get rid of it in how much time? Like, is it going to take a week? Is it going to take a month? Is it going to take a year? And each thing has benefits and other things have time. Everything takes time. So here are some possible lawn removal options. This is the one that I think a lot of people go with, which is sheet mulching. Typically, people will use cardboard. A corrugated cardboard works best. The main reason I say corrugated cardboard is like your cereal boxes and your soda boxes. I'm not 100% sure what types of inks that they use. If that's not something you're concerned with, you could totally use them. And I think the lady in the picture is doing a great job of showing you that she's watering it down. You need to water it down and try not to do it on a windy day because these guys will just keep blowing everywhere. And if you have a temper like I can when this is happening, like it gets to be a lot. So I usually, when I've had to do this in the past, I only do so much and then I'll cover it up and then do so much and cover it up. So the best way to do it would be cardboard, a little bit of compost if you have it, and then mulch on top. This is what's best and this is what works best for most homeowners. Just keep in mind for that cardboard to break down, which is the goal, so you don't have to like, hack a hole into the cardboard, is it's going to take between 3 and 6 months to break down. So if you were to do this month, in the month of June, July, August, September, by the time you're planting them, you'll probably be like, oh my gosh, there's not much cardboard in here anymore. That's great, because then you don't have to try to like, I would just use a hori, like a gardening shovel, but you don't want to be out there looking like you're stabbing the soil with a knife. It's just going to be your way of like cutting a nice little hole in there. Just make sure you keep that cardboard watered down because, like I said, it likes to blow away. And then always remember, it's not going to be a weed-free area for life. That's not the way invasive plants work. They are invasive because their seeds blow, they can move easily. So on top of that mulch, you're going to have some weeds trying to grow. So trying to manually keep up with those, keeping them pulled. We want to plant our plants densely, but since they take 3 years to fill out, you're still going to need to keep that area mulched and weeded pretty well from when you start until when you're finished. But the goal is that we're going to plant things so densely as they grow, it's not going to have as much room in between the plants where you're going to have to like spend your life savings in mulch every couple months. we're hoping that very little mulch will need to be used in the future. And by the way, I love that this is like, I can tell those are like all Amazon boxes. So I feel like everybody can find some of those or ask a neighbor. Another way to do it is called oculation. It's kind of the same thing as the cardboard, because your whole goal is that you're smothering. So using a dark plastic like a tarp, in the summer heat. So it's absorbing into the sun. The black plastic absorbs it. It takes longer than solarization, which is on the next one. It can take 4 weeks on really sunny days. That's why I put that little sunshine up here, because it has to be hot, sunny days because you're basically baking the weeds underneath of it. This really only works this time of the year. If you were to try to pull this off in like September, October, where it's getting cooler, it's going to take a very long time. And if you do the same in the spring, it's going to take a very long time. But summertime, because it's so hot and the days are long and there's so much sunshine, it's going to do a great job of making that area ready. So you just put it down. They use sandbags around the edge. I've seen people use rocks. I've seen people use landscaping fabric. I've seen people throw random things on top. Whatever works for you to keep it from blowing away, that's going to be great. Also keep in mind that the type of tarp matters. You're going to want a nice thick tarp. So if you were to buy one from a cheaper store and it's woven and you can see those like little woven pieces in there, it's going to break down before it actually is finished for the summer. And then you're going to have microplastics and it's just going to be messy. So probably greater than 4, 6 higher milliliters or MILs, whatever that stands for, the thicker kind of tarps. There's a type called like a silo tarp. They're really thick. They're great too. Just make sure you check out the tarp, and a dark one needs to be used for this method. And you can see at the bottom, the amount of time taken from summer is less. Spring and fall, a while. Winter, bless your heart, it's going to be out there the whole time. So if you get started now, then you might have a plot ready by, the end of next month or the middle of next month. So it's not something that needs to be immediately done. It's just something that you need to be thinking about instead of being like, oh my gosh, I have plants and I want to plant it where there's grass. So be looking at the spot you want to plant these plants in and be thinking about now, how am I going to get rid of that? Solarization, a lot of people get this confused with oculation. It is hard to tell from this picture, but this is clear. This is like a clear tarp. So it's just plastic like you can buy at a big box store for putting down to go painting. You're basically making a greenhouse, but a greenhouse that's not vented and is so hot it's baking the things that are underneath of it. So 2 to 6 mil works really well, works best midsummer because it's so hot and so much light. It does take about 4 to 6 weeks. If it's a cooler or cloudier time, and perennial weeds are going to take the longest because, by goodness, they are going to be survivors. What I like about this is it actually encourages some of the weed seeds that are in the soil to grow because it's a greenhouse and they're like, oh, it's comfy, it's moist in here, it's nice and warm. So it's going to actually increase some of those seeds that you don't want in your soil to grow. So you're going to have lots of growth, and then it's going to bake. So you want to wait for that to happen. Wait till you see what looks to be like kind of wilted, dead looking plants. And then I would manually remove anything that you feel like is large or will get in the way. Some people don't. Some people plant right into this area over here. And you can see it's spotty. It works well, but it's not going to get every single plant in the soil. Um, that's why a lot of people do the cardboard method because there's no way things are going to grow through that very easily. And then there's the way that no one wants to talk about. It is the manual removal. It is labor intensive. It takes tools, but it is immediate. So you can think about it that way. A soil cut or a sod cutter. My grass is a different kind of grass that if I even tried to use that, it wouldn't even touch it. So if you have nice, soft, nice grass, this would probably work for you, but mine, not going to work for that. I would have to use this method down here. I would need to use a shovel and I would have to cut into it. And then I'd have to get underneath of it and hack it out and pull it out. So if you wanted to try this on an area where you're going to be planting, do a little area first and see how labor intensive it is for you because I'm going to be honest, outlining it, seconds, that's easy. Doing the cut in, no problem. But pulling those roots, whew, some of those roots are going to give you a fit. No one talks about how aggressive grass is. Grass is aggressive. I have to fight it out in my pollinator garden every year. It is hard to manage, especially if it has the spreading rhizome roots, which is what I have. It just always wants to creep in. But the good news is if you want to do this method, maybe you just have some hard worker in you, or you got lots of people, lots of hard workers in your family, and they want to help you, then this might be great for you. But last but not least, we don't want to say that we're promoting this, but we recognize that some people are just going to use our herbicide. So if that's the choice that you're going to use, I want you to make sure that it's targeted, it's minimal use, so it's not just going to kill everything in its path. The weird thing is that you can typically replant in it the next day. A lot of people think that there's this long lag time. Usually the next day you can start planting in it. But the biggest thing is before you make a purchase, read the labels, read about how you're going to mix it up. If it's not a pre-mixed kind, if it's a kind you're going to have to mix, make sure that you have all of the tools that you're going to need to mix it. Make sure you have the sprayer. Don't try to use a sprayer that was used for something else because we don't want mixing of chemicals if we don't know what that might end up happening with those combinations. So just be mindful of that. And then also when you're reading the packaging, if it has any type of mixtures, like if it's like tablespoons or cups or milliliters, make sure that you're buying different and new measuring utensils. Like, please don't use anything from your kitchen to mix chemicals. And I say that, and some people laugh, but this is really what happens. So if you see on the package it's going to require mixing, just go ahead and pick it up. Don't eyeball it, but definitely do not use things from your kitchen too. And then once you have it, you have it. Soil prep, what to do? There's not a lot to do with soil prep. You want to loosen up your compacted soil lightly. A broad fork works great. A digging fork would be a wonderful thing to do. If you feel like getting down on your hands and knees, you could absolutely loosen it up that way. Adding some leaf compost if you like it kind of like is a conditioner for the soil. It's going to make it a little bit more loamy. Where I planted my first pollinator garden, was next to where my husband built a garage. So it was like a lot of rocks and a little bit of soil, and it was not ideal. So any extra leaf amendments, any life I could bring into that soil is going to help make it easier for the plants to survive and also for moisture retention. Since we don't get rain anymore, it's going to need something in that soil to help with moisture retention. And then help preserve that soil structure, which seems to be hard whenever our soil is dealing with so much dryness. So what not to do? A lot of people do the tilling. I used to help out with my husband's family's garden, and anytime there were weeds, they just run the tiller. And they would just run the tiller through everywhere. And what happens is when you till and till and till, you're losing soil because you are making it so fine, it's blowing away. And on top of that, all of the life that's in your soil, all of those beautiful microorganisms that are holding a job in your soil aren't going to be there anymore because you're breaking up those fungal networks. You're killing off the microscopic organisms. You're getting rid of the worms that are trying to make the channels in there so that, it's more aerated. Tilling once, I get it, but doing the repeated tilling over and over again, you're really just ruining all of that soil structure, and we don't want to be doing that. You'll read some people will say, well, if you have clay soil, just add sand to it. No, that's not really going to change the structure of the sand. It's just kind of adding two things together. Best thing you can do for clay is to continue to add some compost to it or add that leaf litter to it so that over time it can get a little bit more loamy in an organic or natural way. And last but not least is with fertilizer. Native plants don't really need fertilizer. I'm not saying never fertilize it, maybe a very light fertilization, but overall, they don't really need fertilizer. They've grown up in the soil and in the area. So they don't need that. In some ways, if you over fertilize it, you're going to promote extreme growth really fast. And it's kind of the same as us. We don't want our kids to like hurry up and grow up because your bones can't keep up with it and your ligaments can't keep up with it. And plants can kind of get leggy and have a hard time growing too whenever you're like force feeding them all this food. They're not going to grow into the structure that they need to grow into to be the best plant that they can be. So the goal is to set up plants to thrive. We want to match them to their conditions. So is it needing a sunny place or is it needing a shady place? So the resource that we said would be a great one would be Prairie Moon, where you can see it. Now, when we give you your plants, it's gonna say what it is on there. It's gonna say what it prefers versus what it doesn't prefer, and it's definitely gonna have the name of the plant. So that'll give you the opportunity to make sure. Group plants with similar needs. So if you know plants like drier, then put them in the drier place. If you know plants like wetter things, put it in the wetter place. I've helped schools work with making their rain gardens actually look the way that they're supposed to. So there are certain plants that like to be at the bottom of the rain garden. There's certain things that like to be on the edges of the rain garden, and then there's things that like to be on the top of the rain garden. And if you were to mix that up and put the top ones like a black-eyed Susan at the base, the first time it rains, that thing is not going to make it. It's going to die. And the same thing goes if I were to take like big blue stem likes to be wet. If I were to take that up and put it over on the edge, it's going to grow. But instead of being this big, wonderful plant, it's going to kind of get stunted. So know that you're planting it in the right place and put those plants next to each other so that they can be dense and not allow as many weeds to grow. And then that's the third one, plant densely. So the reason that we're giving 3 plants per species per plant, 3 plants of the same, that's what I'm trying to say. 3 of the same plants is so that you can plant them as a grouping so that they're going to grow into like this nice conglomerate. Does that mean you have to plant it that way? No, I'm not going to visit and tell you how to plant your plants. I can give you advice, and so can Ashley. But keeping some plants close together, especially skinnier plants like foxglove beard tongue, it's blooming right now. It's got a beautiful white bloom. It gets kind of tall. By kind of tall, I mean the blooms and the seed heads get about 3 feet tall. And if you plant them as a grouping, they kind of help hold each other up because they have very skinny seed heads. So if not, they kind of start flopping over. So knowing things like that, that if I plant them as a grouping, they can support each other is a really great thing to know. And also they're keeping the weeds from coming up. Always consider that mature size. Yet again, Prairie Moon, but you could also use the Maryland Native Plant Society's website. They have a great resource on there for plants and the sizes that they're going to be. So if the height says it's going to be 2 feet, plan for it to take up about 2 feet. Will it always end up being that height? No, especially if you ignored how much sunlight it needed or how much moisture it needed. But if you are providing it with full light and the right amount of moisture, that bugger's going to be at least 2 feet tall. So you want to know that ahead of time because I see a lot of times people will plant things like near home or near a door, and then they'll have to move it. And native plants do not move easily. So wherever you're planting it, we kind of want to just leave it there because if you try to move it, I can't guarantee a survival of that guy because they usually have such large root systems. Like I'm talking huge root systems. And they're very, very difficult to remove. Not in the sense that you can't remove them, like that they're going to keep coming back. It's more of they aren't going to survive when you move them from one place to another. So the best times to plant in Maryland, a lot of people are surprised. Fall is the best. That is why we're giving you your plants in fall, because a lot of people are like, I want my plants the first day of class. I know you do, but I'm telling you, there's a great chance that you probably didn't have the spot ready for them, that you hadn't really done your research on how much sunlight or how much moisture you got. So our goal is to set you up for success. We're giving you time to learn about your soil, learn about the sun, get the grass out of the way, and then we're going to give you the plants. They're going to be a healthier size instead of these little teeny tiny babies. They're going to be a nice size little plant that you can put into the soil, and everything's going to be ready for it. It's kind of like the parent that had everything ready and the baby came and they're like, all right, I'm ready for this. That's what you kind of are. You're getting everything ready for this little baby. And when you put them all on the ground, you're giving them the best chance of survival. Because if you think about it, summer is tough. If you were to even think about trying to plant a plant in the soil today, that thing's gonna die. Like it's just gonna bake out there. So fall, there's moisture. You're gonna be able to water it easier without you baking outside. And then if you want to add to the area next year, early spring, your soil's already going to be ready still because you've already cleared it and you know where the gaps are from what you planted. Then you'll be able to be more knowledgeable and your ground's ready that you can add to that space. So, like win-win kind of situation. We never recommend planting plants this time of year. They don't transplant well. I wouldn't want to be shoved in the soil out there today without a drink. But do be thinking about how you're going to water them. So if it's not near water, make sure you have a watering can or a way of getting water to them. Because even though you're planting them in the fall, they're still going to need water pretty regularly for this first year. So we are on right down here. We are prepping in the spring for a fall planting, but technically you're kind of doing this too because you're going to plant some, your area is still going to be ready. So you're also going to have that same area ready for your spring planting too. So win-win. That's what we're considering it. So what comes next? You want to mulch properly. I know mulch isn't free, but there are some places where you can get some mulch, like tree trimming companies for a better deal. Just keep in mind that's probably freshly cut and it's going to be hot. So it's fine for putting on cardboard. You just wouldn't want to put like a already breaking down mulch that's like steamy and hot on top of a plant because that will bake your plant. So mulch it properly. Water in when it's established. So when you plant them, start watering, get a watering routine, and then just know that you're going to need to weed in that first year. You're not going to need to weed super hard, but you are going to have to weed a good bit. And then make sure you mark where your plants are so that you don't accidentally pull out your plants that you planted thinking that they're a weed. And I'm only telling you that because I've done that before. And then I had instant regret. I pulled out a cardinal flower once, and then I did that thing where you try to shove it back in the ground real quick, like it didn't happen. It didn't make it. So make sure that you're labeling all those plants really well, because sometimes, shockingly, native plants can look like a weed if you haven't labeled it. And especially if it's early spring next year when there's still these little guys and there's a couple weeds in between. So we'll have like those little white stakes in the plants. So you might want to just put that right next to it. All right, so the next steps, we have our insect interaction class that's happening with Miss Maddie Potter. We're going to learn about host plants, and you're going to talk about maybe some other plants that you want to add to your area. And I'm hoping that she's going to influence me on some new plants that I can grow too, because I'm always looking to add some new host plants to my area, just so I can bring in some unique diversity into mine too. So mark your calendars. I'll send you a reminder because if you told me to mark my calendar for August 13th, I cannot guarantee you that I will remember that tomorrow. So no worries. I will send you a reminder for August 13th. It's also at 1 p.m., but that is our last one. And then the very last one will just be you coming in, us chatting it up a little bit, and you getting your plants and planting them. All right, and then just some more resources. Maryland Native Plant Program, Native Plant Gardening. This is just through Extension, Prairie Moon Nursery, fantastic. And then the Maryland Native Plant Society, which is just mdflora.org. They have the plant guides on there as well. So don't forget, whenever you want to look up anything with Extension, all you have to do is put that EXT on the end of your Google search, and it'll bring up all things Extension, not just Maryland. Um, Anything extension. Not super helpful with native plants because what's native in like Florida isn't native here. So make sure that you're looking at an extension that's close by, like West Virginia, Penn State. Those are two that with native plants that would be very similar to us and would be a great resource. All right, Miss Ashley,
We have a
I've
couple
rambled on for
questions.
46 minutes.
You did good. We have a couple questions in the chat.
I hope I know them.
Yeah, so I can kind of talk a little bit through. Um, the first one was really the question was about the arborist chip drops.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so you talked about that and about how they can get warm, so you should let them sit for a while before you use them. And the other thing is you don't know if there could be invasive things that they chipped. So, if
Oh,
you're going to do that,
absolutely.
yeah, just kind of use it with a little bit of caution, I guess.
Yeah, just keep in mind that a lot of times the tree of heaven, I've seen lots of those poke up. One of the school gardens that we're at Georges Creek, they do the chip drop for their walkways, and we are forever pulling little tiny trees of heaven out of there, which is fine when they're this big. But if you miss them and they're this big, they're hard to get rid of. So yeah, you're 100% right. You can end up with some invasive species that way too.
But knowledge is power, so it's a good source and it's a good resource. It's just knowing
You
how
have to
to.
know that's a potential with it. But if you're going to buy them, make sure that you're getting a natural wood chip. Don't be buying the colored ones because I don't really know what they're colored with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we kind of had that conversation too. Like, can you get it at a big box store? And I said, absolutely, but get the natural because that dye's got to go somewhere, and that can't be good for baby plants.
Yeah. Well, and then also be mindful because I accidentally almost bought um, a weed or a mulch that had a weed killer built into it. So I I didn't even know that was a thing when I was picking it up, but it had like a built-in prune kind of thing.
Interesting.
I thought so too, which was great for a walkway, but not for where I wanted to plant plants.
Yeah, and I've seen like the weed fabrics that have that too. Like, what's that called? Like landscape fabric. So
Yes.
sometimes it'll have that in there as well. So the other question was about frost-free date, or you were saying early spring. So early spring, if it's a perennial that's coming up from the ground, usually they'll be okay, just based on, sprouting whenever nature tells it that it's time based on temperature and climate. But if you're putting a perennial out for the first time that's been babied, you need to make sure you're, acclimating it before you do that, because otherwise it probably will get frosted and could kill it. So hopefully that
Yeah,
answers the question.
and that's tricky because even when we have that native plant sale, that can be close to the date. So you still want to be mindful of making sure that it was raised outside and it's used to being outside. Because if it was straight from a greenhouse going outside, it's probably not going to do super well.
Yeah, so we do have a form for you guys to fill out if you are hoping to get the plants like we did last time. So I'm going to drop that into the chat. It's just a quick Google form to, again, help us keep track of who has actually watched the recordings and for those people that haven't done it live. So we'll drop that into the chat.
And if you're watching this recording later, I will also put it at the bottom of the recording link as well. So I'll make sure I send that out too.
Absolutely. All right.
All
Thank you
right.
all for joining us.
Yes, thank you. If you need anything, you have our email addresses. Get a hold of us. Very welcome. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.